Okay, this is the last panel of the day, or the last presentation of the day. It will be a panel. Welcome back. I hope you had a lovely break. I hope it was the best break of the day. And you're ready for a final session. I know I'm very excited about this panel discussion. I've written so many questions that are already obsolete. That's going to be fun. So yeah, I'd like to welcome myself back to the stage, but also I'd like a round of applause for our artist and creative technology lead at Half Helix, Jordan Shaw, co-founder of Future Talk, Tyler Sammy, and the founder of Transforms AI, Pietro Gagliano. All right. Let's get into this. So I was joking a little bit about these questions being obsolete. So many things have been announced in the last couple of weeks. What's
last 5 minutes.
The thing that excites you the most right now? The thing that was announced, whether it was 5 minutes ago or a year ago, what's got you thinking, got your brain on fire? Let's start with you, Jordan. Pietro, yeah. Jesus.
V5 Midjourney and GPT-4. Yeah, hot off the press. Can't
combined or?
Not. Yeah, I mean combined that would be amazing. Yeah. But like as of late, I think I'm most excited about those two advancements. The research on GPT-4 just looks almost terrifying, but and Midjourney version 5 after Jordan's presentation, I can't wait to dive in even further.
How about you, Jordan?
I think what I'm really excited about is actually like the transition, the evolution of like text to like 3D physical world stuff. And I think sort of like the 3D model that I talked about and showed earlier is like the very beginning of that. But for me, I think like a really cool, or I think like meaningful sort of like use of technology is like how it can be implemented into like physical and like the real IRL world.
So do you think that the ChatGPT plugins are going to help with that, where people without any real abilities, like technical 3D programming and designing, they'll be able to just speak into it? I mean, we can almost do that now with
we're seeing the early stages, I think, now. Yeah, so I think, as you're saying, it's getting there. It's close.
How about you, Tyler?
It's amazing the speed of the really big things that come out, but it's the smaller ones that have really opened up when Stable Diffusion open sourced. And it's kind of the same thing where we're talking about the democratization of creativity on the end user. All of a sudden, there's the explosion of people making more tools to tie into this. So there's all sorts of, there's stuff that came out last night, this morning, that make all those tools better, made by individuals, open source grouping together now, which has changed that sort of thing. You don't have to be a monolith to play in the AI game and to push it forward.
So I think this touches on something Alan was talking about, the exponential, like double exponents, an acceleration, because you will soon be able to use AI, if not now, to program new plugins for AI itself to improve itself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're rapidly, it feels like we can suddenly see what the singularity could actually become. Yep. Just a taste of it, of that acceleration over the last few days. So how do you see the idea of where this takes us? In the next 5 years, it'll be a billion times more powerful than it is right now, depending on which formula you want to go with. So let's start with Pietro. What do you think?
Do you mean like in terms of when the technological singularity will happen?
I mean, how do you feel about it? What do you think the world might be like? When do you think it'll happen? What is singularity? Just every question, basically, in one.
Yeah, question at once. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
42 or whatever the
Next, Jordan.
answer is. I mean, It's like whenever you're thinking about something that's exponential, you make the prediction based on today's values, and it's probably going to happen twice as fast as even you anticipate it happening twice as fast.
Right.
You
like,
know what I mean?
like the cost of creating was alpaca was they did that for $600, and it wasn't predicted to be that cheap, that fast for at least another couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. And I guess, I mean, that's a non-answer, but it's just like, I can imagine some of these things that I dream about in 10 years. Like, you know, my gut says 10 years we're going to have this, like, we're going to be able to tell AI our personal dream and then dive into it, and it'll transform us as human beings. You know, that's my personal goal. Like the best therapist, the best experience, like a crazy drug trip. You know.
So you're very positive about it. What
but
about
even 10 years, that might happen in 5. That might happen in 3 at this point. You know,
like sooner.
Does everyone? I mean, just jump in. If do you feel as positive, Tyler, about where things are going to go?
I'm here to help my best, do my best, and I think that's what we're all trying to do is capture the opportunity and help guide it in a place of cooperation and creativity, so that it can be.
What you?
Yeah, because it's. The critical side of me, I think, is because it's moving so fast, is something that we have to be very careful about. And I think from like a creative point of view, or like through the lens of an artist or creative, I think that's also like some of the things that I'm like interested in, because big picture, like look how photorealistic Midjourney is right now. But when you dive deeper, you can start to find holes and problems with it, with like for like people and like inclusivity of what the output is, or silly things like hands and fingers or text. Like from a high level, it looks really amazing, and I think there's the more you kind of play with it and look into it and go deeper, the more problems you have, or you start to find and discover. So it's moving really quickly, but there's still challenges in many different ways with these technologies. So I don't know, sort of positive or not,
yeah.
But
and we're having those conversations now too, which is a huge part of it. A lot of conversations around inclusivity weren't as prominent or being told from certain sides, and maybe already voices that weren't as loud. Like these things, it was like 15 years ago, we were testing out some tracking stuff for digital signage, and one of the guys in our office was always a woman, and we were trying to figure out why, and then I brought my other buddy in, and it was because we hypothesized, we had 3 other people come in, those black guys had bigger lips, and there was something going on there, and it would always, our huge sample size of 3 guys, but they're the only guys that would ever trigger that. Mm-hmm. And that was a long time ago, and it didn't matter to anyone, really, because you didn't see those numbers.
Right.
All that stuff was behind in another place.
Mm-hmm.
And now all this stuff's getting pushed into the commons.
Yeah. It's a larger sample size, right? And people are sort of almost, it's like doing this like weird social UAT phase of AI almost.
And can you explain that a little bit?
Oh, just like, I guess I sort of talked about before, one of the sort of like beautiful things about all these platforms is that there's enough, or it's accessible to more people than in the past. So you can do that online. You can experiment with these tools online. But because of that, there's no way to test tens or hundreds of millions of users in a lab or in a development phase. Like it's almost like going through like a UAT phase of a product or a website or a new technology. At the same time, it's being sort of like pushed out into the world, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So there obviously are a lot of issues related to the AI, where it gets its data, how biased that data is, what the end result is, and as we're playing with it, or as it starts to be used, does that start to even out, or does it actually get worse?
I'm a big fan of Stable Diffusion over Midjourney just because it's open and the models are open, because when the community realizes that beautiful woman turns back 99 out of 100 a blonde white woman,
right,
people can train embeddings, can fine-tune it, and even from there they'll prompt enough to get ethnic variation, then take those and train it back on the token woman, so that when they share that model and somebody else uses it, there's diversity in it.
It's fascinating how much that cracks open the way our society thinks and operates. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is essentially another issue. Midjourney is being sued right now by, I don't know, Getty Images, by a couple of different artists. There's been mass protests around the use of some of these tools. How do you, what are your thoughts on whether it's copyright or permission around? Is it the same? If I have an art book in my house and I reference it to do something, is that the same when I'm using generative art, or is it something else? Anybody, just jump in.
I mean, how has it worked before? It's got to be, we've got to kind of model. I want to model my answer after, say I'm a director of a movie, and I've watched 1,000 movies in my life, and every single one of those movies have influenced the movie that I'm making. I mean, it's kind of like that in a lot of ways. So that's the argument to say, hey, this is just, it's here to stay. You put something on the internet, it becomes part of the zeitgeist. Sorry, it's one blip. At the same time, I see the argument, for, say, Midjourney looks a lot like ArtStation. A lot of the art on ArtStation has this particular style, and if you
Greg Rakowski or whatever.
Trending on ArtStation.
Yeah, and right, it trained on ArtStation. Obviously, I'm not making that up, right?
No,
well,
that's one of the most common prompts.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you notice that specifically in like version 1 and version 2, is that everything has this
quality
very
to it.
concept art and sort of sci-fi aesthetic.
Yeah. And if you the prompt was like soccer ball, it comes back as this like ArtStation stylized soccer ball. You know what I mean?
And it was like sort of experimenting with that, and I noticed that as well. And I was like, it was a weird process to try to like guide images to move out of that aesthetic at that point.
Yeah.
Which was, I think, an interesting problem. So I think also there's a little bit of like, as a user or as a human, like self-reflective, like cultural awareness of like cultural bias maybe too, or like digital bias or sourcing images or whatever that, say, like a creator might need to be aware of when using this, but that doesn't really speak to the question of copyright.
And then art processes like creating mood boards is typically outgoing digital collaging, right? And grabbing those things. The way that the latent space works in diffusion models is similar to what Pietro's saying. Like, it's looking at all the stuff and boiling it down. And when you ask for a soccer ball, it's not referencing a specific soccer ball. It's making a new image based on its understanding of what that token means, right? It's boiled down to not an image anymore. But I think it was Karen that was referenced earlier. She had heard somebody else in a talk say, I can't remember the names, but it's like, so, but even if that's the case, like new tools need new rules because it's changing fast. And it's okay that people are uncomfortable. They should be. It should be also be okay that people are excited and trying to do the best out of it. And there are going to be people doing the worst out of it. Tools are tools. You can write a beautiful song or a lullaby for a child with your pencil, or you can stab somebody in the eye. That's the reality of like living, and an eye for an eye and all that stuff, right? But the reality is it's changing, it's shifting. All these people are getting fired from different jobs, so what are we doing to help them out? How can we help artists through this? How can we have these conversations and work our way towards something where we're all maximizing the opportunities and not squashing each other down?
Do you feel like this is different than the dawn of photography kind of taking over from portrait painters? Do you feel like it's different in the sense that, you know, you're saying it's difficult to explain to some of the artists that are suing Midjourney exactly how the technology works. Is it really stealing? And that maybe, or you know, did they give consent by having the images already on the internet where everybody could see them? Those are tricky things that the law is going to figure out. But as we get more and more complex and the AI starts to kind of create itself, like when we're asking AI to build its own plugins to help us do different things, we're not even going to necessarily understand exactly how it works. How do we deal with that exact problem of understanding who owns what? Who actually gets to make money off of is really what it comes down to. Who gets to make money?
Opt-in, pay royalties, right?
Like prompt sharing, like
and art, right? Like, and that's where I believe Stable Diffusion 3 is supposed to kind of go. Like we were talking about the change in prompting from Midjourney to 5 into more natural language. When Stable Diffusion 2 came out, everybody's old prompts trending on ArtStation, concept art by Greg, which happened because somebody, those weren't in the original like release with Stable Diffusion, but somebody put those things together, had some of the first really good images, and everybody else started using it because it was a great way to get good images.
Right.
And then Greg becomes this famous guy, which I get why he's kind of mad, but like way more people know about him and might actually buy one of his pieces now. But like, so the reason why it changed there at 2 is because they stripped out a ton of stuff. They made it way harder to make pornography, which made humans kind of look worse because there was less like nude drawings basically that you would do in art class. And they stripped out a lot of references so that those tokens weren't there. Some people start adding them back in slowly.
With their own sets, I guess.
Exactly.
So that you're talking about Stable Diffusion, and they kind of had this right to be forgotten kind of thing, like that Google did in Europe, where they allowed artists to opt out of the data set, right? Is that how it worked?
Well, once the data set's out, the models are out. Like, you're gonna come to my house and
for the next version.
Yeah,
I mean, for the update, will the next. You're kind of right. The genie's out of the bottle.
It's tough.
So what do you do? How do you ethically create your art? How much do you guys think about this stuff? Like, does it keep you up at night, or are you like, it'll sort itself out?
I think we're in like kind of an ugly baby stage of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like when Napster came out, Metallica was so pissed off, right? And then streaming like changed the industry, the whole music industry, whether it's better for artists and record labels. Like streaming changed everything, right? MP3s, that technology changed everything. So we're just at this like ugly baby stage right now where certain people are going to be pissed off, other people will be like, oh, I want my style to be in there because that shows that I'm affecting culture, right? Like that means more than money to some artists.
Can we do a quick poll? Like just here in the room, can the people in the room raise your hand if you're actually afraid for your job? Okay. Well, this is fascinating for those of you watching online. Nobody put up their hand, which I think is interesting because I think everybody here probably at this conference thinks that they're going to control the AI versus the AI controlling them.
I'm afraid for my existing job, I just know that it will change. Like if I'm afraid from my existing job right now, my talent as I went to school with Tyler to become a graphic designer, right? Like, these projects that I'm working on right now, I kind of look at them like, this is the last interface I'm going to design, I think. Like this is as good, has to be my opus,
And didn't you become a designer because you were an artist and you needed to get a job?
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
What we have to try and do, which is very difficult, is make sure that the support is there for these transitions. And one of the difficulties of the monoliths holding the keys to a lot of these things is we can't necessarily assume that they're going to take all those profits and put it into like universal basic income or something like that. Mm-hmm. The whole point of using AI to reduce monotonous tasks, and something we do at our studio, whether it's AI or just automation, is to relieve people of doing monotonous tasks and hopefully open them up to do the most human things, the most creative things of exploring humanity, as opposed to reworking keyframes or style transferring by hand. Let's use those tools, and let's make sure that there's a way to transition between. I don't know how to do that. That's tough. It's probably taxing, but even with all of this, like ChatGPT, GPT-3, 4, we agree that poems and books are art, right? And text is art, and it's like, where did all the text come from?
Exactly. Well,
and they're selling, they're $25 billion. All these plugins people are paying to be a part of the game, and now you can Shopify in it and all these things. But like, why isn't this the same conversation with that?
That's a really great segue to one of my questions, which is,
do you know the answer?
No,
why aren't authors, they're like foaming at the mouth? Why aren't they upset?
I was just going to, I actually haven't thought about that, but from what you just said, I was just going to pose the question of, has anyone seen or heard of, writers or authors being as upset about it as, say, photographers or visual artists or illustrators or graphic designers?
Yeah, it's like, that's my letter versus that's my pixel. Like, it's...
Right. Is it harder to recognize a style of writing in a long form? Like, you can reference a specific writer's style, and you can sort of see that. But I mean, like the more specifics of like a artist or like a visual aesthetic that's specific to that person. Like,
it's a different cognitive recognition, reading versus viewing. I suppose. I don't know. What do you think, Pietro?
Well, I don't know. I was just imagining that like we're kind of going back to old ways, like ancient ways now with all of this, where like, say, you're a storyteller. You might not have. You don't own the story that you're telling to your tribe. You're not like, this is my story. Maybe this is your version, but it's like, this is part of our culture. This is our story, and we're kind of going back to those ways now, where all these things are going to be opted in and open sourced and manipulated and, evolving. It's like it becomes everybody's thing. And so as a writer, I was thinking, like, how would I even tell if my data was being used, and how could I give ownership? It's very easy. It might be easier as a visual artist, but it's a really interesting question. Anyways, I was just imagining we're going back to like tribal culture with this stuff.
And sort of a step back to like the sort of like original questions, like, does it keep me up at night? I think also like coming from a software and programming background, where so much of the tools a lot of the tools were originally developed through this lens of like open source and like the free web. Anything that goes online, like whether I not like it or not, there is a voice inside of me being like, I have to kind of be okay with like, it's probably it might be stolen at some point and put into these data sets. Whether it's right or wrong is different. There's a different sort of topic or discussion, but I think there has to be unfortunately there is like this sort of like acceptance of, if I put something out there, I have to accept what is going to be done with it.
I just had a thing happen. Isn't the issue here just money?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because
you tell me.
because why do we create? Because we're either trying to make money, or it's like an expression, or there's just something you got to get out. There's a lot of reasons why gods are often creators, and we're trying to do these things. We're just trying to find that essence and to share and to understand these journeys, the stories that go over time and get rewritten through religions, all these things. If everybody, so let's say everything you made had some sort of token in it, let's say call it an NFT or something like that.
And it was stored on some kind of blockchain.
And however it got filled, like together, and if I went to ChatGPT and I was like, write me a song that sounds like that one that this person wrote, or even if I didn't and it used a fragment of that, you just got an automatic royalty. Forget even the opt-in or opt-out. It's like all of a sudden you're just getting checks. You're like wired. And you're like, I didn't know. And it's like, oh yeah, somebody over there added your fine tune.
Wouldn't it get so atomized though that it would be almost negligible? Like, right?
Look at that, everybody's just getting, and if you want to participate in society, you just get to be a part of it.
That is a new economy, though, that I think that we can't quite wrap our mind around right now. Is like, Jason makes something, Tyler remixes it, Jason gets a piece, Tyler gets a piece when Jordan remixes it. It's something that we can't quite. It's so complex. I don't think we can wrap our mind around it right now, but it's probably coming.
But think about like the music industry. Those are royalties, and when you go to a label, they help make sure you get your royalties because they sue people who like rip your stuff, and they have on YouTube they auto listen to your stuff, and it's like, oh, you wanna put monetization, then you can use this song, but they're gonna get your ads, or you can't run ads against it, and they'll run ads on your thing. This is happening already. Mm-hmm. It's it takes big businesses who are going to take a huge cut, and a lot of lawyers. Yeah. Right?
And it takes artists suing artists to get their name as put into, they are a co-writer of that song, and then they start to get a little cut of the royalties. Mm-hmm. But it does feel like it's going to get so split that it becomes almost meaningless.
Purple.
I think the fear, like I think Tyler, you had a good point about we create either for money or for meaning. And what happens when AI gets so good at creating meaning for us so that it becomes almost like a drug where there's nothing else that we want more than just to tap into our GPT-3 dream or GPT whatever it is, and it just gives us exactly what we want, like the Matrix. Is that something?
I'm already there.
Eventually, I don't know. I would say like eventually, you can sort of see it as like trends of like detox or like technology or social media or news like detox that people are doing in various different ways. I wouldn't be surprised, sort of, if that like starts to happen. Mm-hmm. Like I was thinking, even like even actually today, like. I have a smartwatch, but then like every once in a while I'm like, I can't deal with this. I'm like, I like too much technology, too much connection. I don't need to know all of whatever it's tracking, quantified self. And I'm like, I'm out for like a few days or a week, or like the like focus like feature on my phone. Sometimes I'll be like, I can't like off, like, or turn that on for like a couple of days.
So you'll have like OG designers where you go get a pencil or
go for a run or a walk. Yeah. Like I think that's speaking, or what I mentioned earlier, is that everything for me anyway sort of comes back of like, how can technology be used to like facilitate stuff in real life?
Mm-hmm. So what should artists do? Should artists do right now that are not tech, unlike everybody in this room, maybe some of the people online that aren't tech savvy, or they're interested in AI, they're watching because they're maybe a little bit nervous or a little bit afraid of it, but they're not sure, how do I integrate it when I'm not a nerd?
It's getting a lot easier. There's Wombo, I think, is a Canadian company. They have really accessible apps and websites that you can just use, and it's like comes with a whole bunch of prompts and stuff like that. Like it's just getting easier and easier with natural language processing, so you don't have to.
Should they feel like they have to get into it?
No, you don't have to listen to rock and roll either. Like
how do you imagine the future artist, the future junior copywriter, the future junior designer, the people that are 8 years old right now? How do you imagine them moving through the life of an artist?
I was just even say like an engineer or like web developer, because it does output code as well, and experimenting with that, you still do need to understand say like for software development or programming, you still need to understand logic and intention, and it can be kind of seen as like still just a tool. That right, like you still need to understand the premise of certain core concepts.
it just moves, like beautiful art is beautiful art. And there is something so special about somebody who took 1,000 hours to hand do a thing that's huge. Like it has a tactile value, and that human essence is often just like it's inherent. Like it's there. And obviously what's happening right now is the digital art thing is there, and it's funny watching people make like pixelized embeddings to like make the really good AR look like old games, and then add like a CRT bit to it and all that kind of stuff, and then it'll be in VR and all that.
It'll become more valuable.
But it still feels really good to hold an old Nintendo controller and look at it on a tube screen. And it's also really nice to take off your glasses sometimes and just not have to see as well. And not feel the way that
triple round a little bit.
Yeah.
Like we still buy artisanal bread, even though machines make bread. We still respect quality garments, even though the loom's been around for forever, and machines make clothes. We still the candle industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and electricity didn't kill the candle industry.
Yeah.
So like if you're an artist, and it's funny that we're like glorifying being an artist now all of a sudden, because it kind of sucks. Being an artist. When did art ever make money? You know what I mean? You either double down on your craft and ride this wave, or you like try the new technologies that are becoming free and more available all the time. Like Tyler said, you got two choices.
And it's ideas, right? Like if you're a web developer, like I don't know anybody that really loves debugging code. I'm sure there are some people that do. But also you're writing code to get there. And we have all these frameworks now. You're not inventing a language to start with. We have JavaScript, and then maybe you're using Vercel to like get some systems going. We have all these tools that just keep making it easier to get to ideas. And this is just going to help push us up. So we're spending less time fighting tools and getting closer to what we're dreaming of. And ideally, we can kind of do that a bit more together and realize that maybe we're all mostly dreaming about the same thing instead of fighting over how to get there.
What about our ability, like you mentioned, nobody enjoys debugging, but
I take that
isn't
back.
the act of that, well maybe,
I do sometimes. It's silly to say.
but the act of trying something in I almost said analog world, like coding is analog, but trying something, failing, learning, right? That seems to be the sort of a human path. Is failure, learning, failure. That's how we learn how to walk. It's how we learn how to talk. It's how we learn how to do all sorts of things. And if you cut out the learning part of it and you just go straight to like a perfect whatever it is that you want, are you really an artist? Are you really learning anything?
I mean, anyone who's played with these things, like Jordan's whole presentation was all about going down that path of this works, this doesn't. Like he had slide after slide of like his learnings. It's still happening, and it will continue to happen. No matter what technology we're trying to sew together, you're going to try to put these two things together and fail. I think that'll never end. And so long as you get gratification from that as a human, I think that's really exciting.
Yeah.
It feels like money and meaning again.
And there is something there too about how it's used, and you talked about focus mode, and think about the mobile device, that whole story, but also when it was first there, I remember my friend went down to the States and got an iPhone and jailbroke it, and like the first thing he did is install a Nintendo emulator on it, and we were like, this is amazing, but it also sucked because like you couldn't really press the buttons because there's no buttons.
Yeah.
And then eventually, when you don't have internet, you're like, what is this phone even good for? I can't like go on Twitter and Instagram. Like things like that. And it's like, it could do anything you want. And it comes down to, I think, society, and then also like what you're trying to do. Because if it gets too easy to express yourself? Is that like the problem here? Is if it gets like if these AI makes it too easy for us to?
What is expressing yourself? I guess is part of the question. Like, yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, what you're saying about putting things together, like that is expression and curiosity, and I think as long as there's two things that could potentially be combined in any sort of like way, we're still going to continue down that path. And it's however easy it gets from like the pre-existing tools or technologies, it's just going to like create new tools and new opportunities for something that didn't exist to like be combined with something else. Or like even like the example of like candles, I don't know, just thinking like what would happen if you like prompted like candle scents and like created like synthetic AI generated like candles. Like that's a whole other like availability, like possibility that integrates and ties in with technology
and the candle industry.
Heard it here first.
Yeah. One of my favorite prompts for a long time to test myself and to test the like new versions and stuff is a bear riding on a bee, and say like a little bear on a big bee, and like early on it was just like not even like a thing, and then with DALL-E 2 they started to get like the on top of stuff, and then with like and it's like this is something I could do in Photoshop relatively easily. Probably with my hands it'd be like all right, but it's like so hard to do. And then it gets closer, like when they get the on top, and I could put a bee on top of a bear, no problem. I don't know why. And then now there's this thing called ControlNet out, which like 100% I know exactly what to do and I'd get a good result. So I'm not even going to do it.
It's not fun anymore?
It's not harder.
I don't really want it to.
You like the
to
challenge?
do it.
The
I don't
challenge
know. Like
of trying to figure it out? Is that?
Yeah, that's kind of it, and like putting the pieces together and all these pieces, like
it's a similar topic of like what I was talking about, like exploring and trying to get words to come out of like diffusion models.
Yeah.
You can get letters sometimes,
Yep.
but to get the words or the letters right in the right order for the words that you want, like. I'm like, why am I obsessed with this?
Yeah.
It's like because it's hard.
Yeah.
In like
Right.
a strange way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what. It's wild, and that's like that kind of addiction possibility, especially as it's been speeding up. It was only a year ago, like Disco Diffusion was so fast to make videos. It's like, oh man, I could get a frame in like 45 seconds. I got down to 3 seconds this morning. 3, and now it's like, oh yeah, okay, 2.1, 2.2. Oh, now, but if I change this way, 2.3. It's like before I'd just do that and at least walk away for a little bit, and now this loop is just.
So a bit more dopamine involved. There are a lot of questions coming in, and I've checked it early, and so I think I might actually jump into some of these now, and I'll try to call out the people that ask the questions. But I like this one. Ian Max asks, how do you define artist? Like, we're entering into kind of a new age, a new phase. How do you look at being an artist if you can now kind of do anything? without effort. Anyone, just jump in. Artist.
I think without effort
Easy
is
question. No.
is a tough one, because there's, like, when you get projectors, which are awesome, because they let you see things with natural light. Like, I can now trace something, like do a mural. That's not going to make me like better with like paint. Like, it's still going to spill if I haven't used a brush. I'm going to learn that process. Sometimes it's nice to see stuff that isn't perfect. You can trace that. The prompting, it's still just ideas. Like, if you have like shitty idea, it might look good, but it's still not like that cool. And ultimately, all this, I think one of the underlying things here is that it's really democratizing the opportunity to learn and educate about what these things mean. You're talking about like lenses and things like that. I work with video and stuff. Shout out to my boy John out there who knows that stuff so much better, so I never really have dove in deep. I've never learned so much more like camera terminology so that I could get the look I want than now.
And I was going to say that, like, I think that the interesting thing with that is, like, in the real world, sometimes you would have access to, say, a camera, and you're not even necessarily paying attention to those settings. You're changing them, but you're playing around and moving them. You're not reading what they actually are and experimenting. And it's funny that you're saying that, because it's forcing explicivity of having to almost like know what those terms are, even if you know how to use them in a different way, in like a more tactile way.
So can I ask that in a different way? Are you offended if someone says, "Oh well, you didn't put any effort into that"? You didn't really make that. It was just you just
right. Yeah,
that happened when the camera came out, right?
Yeah.
Like, painters were like, "You just made the machine do it." Like, this has happened again and again in the art world.
Through the through the lens of like creativity, or like we're talking about art a lot, but I think a big part of that definition also has to do with like the history and the body of work that led up to whatever is being made. And I think it's the showcase, or the journey and the exploration to get to wherever it is we're talking about is part of that definition.
Let's use photography for a second, right? If you use autofocus, are you a photographer? For a long time, too, there was a thing of like iPhone photos, right? Oh, you're taking it on an iPhone. Taking it on a photographer. It's not a real photographer.
Yeah.
It's definitely easier now to get a really good photo out of an iPhone than a classic camera. But how you're looking at it and how you're framing it, and it does help you auto-frame a bit now.
Pushing that medium makes
and
you
what
an
does
artist.
that photo mean? What does it mean? And it's great, I think, if you can help people get their meaning across by it not looking like junk because they don't know how to manipulate a machine or a device. Because is that really what matters? Is that like the most valuable thing?
That's
or is
the
our
question.
humanity
Yeah.
the most important thing?
I think that is the question. You nailed it. Doesn't matter.
It's cool.
Yeah, but like, what are we worried about? Is what I'm asking everyone. Like artists, there'll always be artists. Like, and we can define artists on a spectrum too. Like, there's a real artist who's doing art because he or she believes the world needs it.
Believes the world
needs it.
Needs it. Yeah.
Or they need it. Or God has inspired them. Like there's something about art for art's sake that will never go away.
Yeah.
So it's like, we don't have to worry about that. That will be always there. And then all the way up to like craftsperson to a robot that feels like they're doing art, but they're really just pixel pushing all day. Like, sorry, those jobs are going away because you're already a robot.
Reinforcement learning, it's getting rewarded for good art. So it is going to be feeling that creative process. And let's put it this way too. People, in my opinion, people who get to create are actually, and there's the starving artists and these things, like, that's a a joy as much as it can be a pain. There's a lot of people who don't think they can do things, so they don't get to experience that because they didn't have a chance maybe as they're growing up, or they didn't have the opportunities that afforded them. And then as you get older, things that other people do really well, you just, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that and like make an ugly thing. So the opportunity to express yourself that way. How many people are comfortable here singing in front of an audience if you're not a good singer? Maybe you get drunk and go in a room in a karaoke and like you're all right, but like you need a certain amount of practice to even
who decides what's
do that.
good?
And these things. So like this is opening up an opportunity for people to get to play with craft and craft making.
And see if they love it, or
What it
discover
means.
what meaning it has for them.
It's self-education, and it all feeds back, I think, to educating. The educational opportunities that AI can do is democratize barriers.
Here's a question from Jody. I'm currently in an interactive design program. Is it a waste of time? Should I learn? What should I learn now so I'll be equipped for the workforce 4 years from now? Well, 4 years. Wow.
Guys, we're about to change Jody's life, so let's really think about. Can we have a minute?
Yeah,
Is Jody here?
I don't know.
Yeah. I was mad when we got to interactive design in year 3, finally, and then it wasn't everything I wanted. It was actually basically a flash class, FITC. There you go, and it was like annoying because we wanted to learn more. We're talking about interaction. Like, this is all about interacting with machines, so I don't know how interactive design is not a great idea right now. It seems like a perfect thing.
Yeah, it does.
Interacting with machines and using that to facilitate like future interactions with people through technology as well. So I think it's the process of learning and the journey and understanding like your surroundings. I think that the programs can help and expose you to.
And you're going to learn the language of how to express what you want to get out of the design.
Design thinking.
Exactly. Yeah.
Design thinking is always a thing, right? Like, I don't know where that
what's
goes.
the answer? Is it a waste of time? No, I think. No.
I would say not.
No,
not
but
a waste of
get
time,
ready
Jody.
to interact with AI instead
Yeah.
of other humans.
Yeah.
Get ready to design systems that interact with intelligent machines rather than intelligent people.
Yeah.
Does that mean you can throw? That doesn't mean you have to throw UX out the window. It just means you're designing for a different thing.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be
reward
school.
design, prompt design. It's a different type of design. I think that
And
you're
it's
applying
all
the
it's
same
all
theories.
it's all responsive, right? So think back when it was just all CRT and it was like pretty much all the same. Everybody designed for that because you didn't really have a bunch of windows. And then screen sizes change, and then we come into phones, and it's like, oh, you have to have mobile response, so you have to change the way that your designs can be affected based on the viewer. And now you're designing for Siri. How does ChatGPT respond to you? How do I ask Siri a question so she doesn't just say, I found something on the web? Like, all these things are interactive design.
And then I think even going up and beyond that, it's the designing for experiential and like either interactive or responsive architecture or environments too, is things to consider.
Responsible and inclusive design. There's a lot of design with digital interaction that needs still plenty of work.
Pietro, how excited are you for a future where the transmedia franchises we experience in games and films have meaningful stories that impact one another?
ooh, like shared universes.
Yeah, sure. That's from Stefan.
Very, very excited. Yeah, I mean, this might get like weird at a corporate level too, right? Like we're seeing right now, like you'll never see Superman in a Marvel movie, but like, wow, like the more open we're making these worlds, that would be. I mean, you know, it's puppets telling fart jokes right now. but robots make TV. That's what we want to do, is make a maker app where people can make characters and give them backstories, and your character can appear in someone else's, short little fart joke.
Yeah.
That is really the potential of a lot of this, so long as we are willing to share our art with each other.
And using IP, I had an idea of where Disney might license their characters for you to interact with or date or whatever. Like, it could get really weird.
And those are the brands of the future. I think that, say, Disney may or may not, but in these bigger brands, it'll take them longer to take that risk. But we're going to see IP properties willing to take the risk to say, I'm going to open this world to the fans and let them tell the stories. That'll be a big leap for some brands and IP properties, but we'll see it happen, and that'll be really exciting.
Who do you think?
It's going to happen anyways, though. When you make the tools to make it easy, to make a Star Wars thing, we can take pictures right now, and I'll turn you into a stormtrooper in 30 seconds.
And audiences will want to remix that media. They'll demand it.
Well, even think about what was it, the Star Wars with Luke, where they had his face on him and he was young, and they did the traditional methods of doing it. It looked kind of whack, and then Corridor Digital's why don't you guys deep fake his face on it? It looks way better, and they're spend a fraction of the money, right?
Yeah.
And probably did it faster than the people who were hand doing that stuff.
It's true.
So there's still a lot of comments, chatter around wrapping our heads around the idea of creativity. I'll just give you a little taste of some of the comments rapidly, and see if there's a way for us to respond to the audience, because I don't think that they're done with the idea. Do you think that AI diminishes human creativity? Is one. Would you say that AI is just calculators for translating creativity? And there's another one that says, just because an artist puts images on the internet so people can see them doesn't mean that it's open season for those images, and that we shouldn't make sort of false conclusions or equivalencies there. It is a new. I think that we're talking about a technology that's very precise in a weird way, but we're humans, and we're emotional, and we feel, like you said, meaning around the work that we create. How do we reconcile that? I think that there are a lot of people that just don't know how to reconcile it.
First off, the technology is not precise, which is why it works.
Interesting.
And stable diffusion is called stable diffusion because they finally figured a way so that when you put in the same seed with the same sampler, you would get the same image if you have the same all the other parameters. But when it was all being built out, it wasn't precise, and you didn't know what quite you were going to get, which is similar. Like the neural network is, operating in the same kind of ideas as our heads, and it's got it. People should be rewarded for participating in this sphere. So yeah, it's not open season. It kind of is right now, but we got to figure out ways so that people get their kickback.
We're excited by the technology. Are we evangelizing something just because we like it and it's new, or what's our responsibility? What's your responsibility?
I just feel like so I grew up fearing AI, right? Like I said in my presentation, the Terminator scared the shit out of me. Lawnmower Man scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. And yes, horrible movie. But at a certain point, I'm like, this is inevitable. It's going to happen. So let's make the best of it. Let's stop fighting it. Let's stop being fearful of it. Let's embrace the training of better models, better stories, and what are we really trying to? We're kind of coming into our teenage years as a species. As a result, we're like, who are we? What does it mean to be human? It's not just for artists, for all of us as humans. Yeah. This is going to really cause us to look in the mirror. And I don't think that fear is the answer. I think that love is the answer. I don't know how else to say that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think I actually think we should almost end with that because, I mean, any final thoughts? We have a minute left. What's something that you need to mention?
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer. One.
Money and meaning. That's what I.
Hope.
That's what I
Yeah, hope. Really, like I'm trying to be at the edge along with Pietro to understand it, so we can help mold it in a way that respects and uplifts and creates opportunities for people, and we should demand that of the organizations that are putting it out there too. Let's figure out a way that that people always are the winners here, and not corporations.
Oh man, we'll see. All right, well, a round of applause for the panel.
You want to,
Just for